In Gaza, the Gaza Strip, which is a, a small section of Palestine or Israeli occupied Palestine, the health ministry in Gaza has declared a COVID-19 disaster with a near health system collapse. It's one of the most crowded. Gaza is just one of the most crowded places in the world, on the earth, man. It's just an absolute disaster there. The state of Israel has completely blockaded the Gaza Strip, both by sea, land, and air. Now, anytime you hear a government say national security reasons, you need to stop yourself and be like, what does that actually mean? Well, part of the blockade is that the population there is heavy regulated, meaning everything that goes into the Gaza Strip is controlled by the Israeli military. And so there's been a massive shortage of key medical supplies, even before Corona, but especially now with Corona, especially when it comes to ventilators, all types of medical supplies that you could think of. Those supplies are not reaching the Gaza Strip. And it's a huge humanitarian disaster, and that's been the argument for a while. But the Israeli military then will always say, well, Hamas, that's why this blockade exists. But even the US military, when they're occupying a certain place, they still allow humanitarian supplies to get to the people that need it. You know, and that's a key difference, is that this is purposeful. Why? Because they need to make life as difficult as possible for people there, so that they can ascertain their position of power. They need to have more control. You know, everything, even to get into Gaza, is so difficult. You know, even the West Bank, to be honest with you. So this is just, to me, regardless of where you are, for medical supplies not get to the population, there's a lot of people that live there. It's just a humanitarian disaster, and we need to hold them accountable.
Now, how long has this blockade been going on? I feel like it's been since early years of Obama.
Yeah. It's been going on for a long time, over 20 years. It was imposed in 2007, so right before Obama took office.
Oh, okay. What had happened in 2007?
Man, I needed to inform myself better about Gaza. Like, I could talk about the West Bank all day, but has to probably do something with Hamas taking control, political control in Gaza. And when there's two main parties when it comes to the Palestinian Authority. It's Hamas, Fatah, and there's probably another one, but Hamas, the political party Hamas, did take control in Gaza. And once that happened, Hamas has been known for some parts of Hamas, because Hamas is a big organization. Parts of Hamas have been known for the rockets that fire toward Tel Aviv or other terrorist activity. So that's
right.
So once they took control, that's when the blockade was instituted. Now I get on the surface, it's like, well,
have they had an election since?
Have they had an election since? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm not.
I wonder if that would, in both, like, like countries playing hardball with you for voting this guy in. Are you gonna be like, okay, if we vote the other party, things can lessen up, or we stick to this guy? It's a fuck you, like, it's a patriotic act of defiance.
Right. And it's easy for things to get convoluted, right? Because once you say terrorism, then you will feel justified in the actions you take, right? Because of Hamas,
Yeah.
Parts of Hamas have conducted terrorist attacks and things of that nature. But you have to, with these kinds of things, is why does Hamas even exist in the first place, right? The whole fight is that they would argue is that they're fighting for the freedom of the Palestinian people because of the terrorist acts that the state of Israel has committed against the Palestinian people. So, but what is the point of regulating medical supplies to hospitals? Why do that?
I mean, I could think of a reason they might say, just to, shut it up. Be like, we don't know exactly what all the equipment is or who it's going to.
Yeah.
Like, say, give me a war-torn country in Africa. Like, you want to send all the supplies you want to the people suffering there, but there's no guarantee that all those supplies aren't going to the warlords that already have control.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So it is that easy to think of a reason. I'm sure that people high up have better lawyers than me.
Right. And no, and I concede to that point. And for people looking at it from the outside in, there's a million reasons you can think of, especially if you're very supportive of the Israeli state. It's easy to look at that. But at the same time, when you're looking at the amount of poverty, the rate of unemployment, you're looking at all these other factors, and what is the blockade actually doing? If your goal is to get rid of Hamas leadership, if that's the goal, whether you agree with it or not, how does instituting a blockade, which will make everybody hate you more by making everybody suffer more, the right way to do it? That means that to me signifies that that's not the actual goal, right?
Well, I could see it in a different way, though. You blockade them, and I mean, who are the people going to blame? The government that, like, their government that can't get it done with the other people? Like, say when we sanction the fuck out of Iran or North Korea,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they hate America, but I'm pretty sure the big strategy here is they've hated America all their life, but there's a government that's supposed to be for them that's still not putting shit on the table for them. Eventually, they're going to look within, I think, is the hope.
That is absolutely fair. I think,
and that's why I was saying. That's why I was asking if they had any elections since the 2007 blockade, because it'd be kind of like a referendum on Hamas's leadership. Like, do we want to make that big political stance against Israel again, or do we want to take a step back in our rhetoric against Israel just to have a little relief? Go with a party that isn't so outspoken, let's say.
Right. Those are all fair points you brought up, and it's an open discussion. And I've never been to Gaza, but I think maybe one of the key differences is that Gaza is a very, very small, very, very small piece of land, relatively speaking. Like, it's really, really small. And the people there have been under an Israeli military occupation for a very long time. So although
probably the 40s, right?
Yeah. So that history, like when you've been occupied under the same people, and you've been for such a long time, you're not going to see this, let's say, divide in who to blame, right? Everybody understands that I can't get a permit to leave the Gaza Strip, not because of Hamas, because when I get to the checkpoint for the Israeli military, they're going to say no, or I'm not going to get permission from the Israeli authorities to even leave the Gaza Strip or get a job. Like, the unemployment is so high in Gaza, but it's so hard to get a permit to work. Every facet of your life is controlled by them. There was an example where there was guys fishing in Gaza Strip, and then they had their boat destroyed by the Israeli Navy because they were under threat. There's just so many examples of the use of violence against people in Gaza, and that humanitarian situation there has been like that for so long. So I get what you're saying, and I know I'm a little biased, but
Well, what you just said kind of goes against what I did just say. Israel isn't doing what we do with North Korea and Iran.
right,
We
exactly.
sanction the hell out of them and kind of fuck right off. They're they're hitting them on both sides.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
You're like you can make their leaders the enemies, but you're still so it reminds me of the IRA. Like, what the fuck else choice are you leaving these people?
exactly. And I've like I said, I've spoken to this about this before. It's been incremental settler colonization. What does that mean? Is that every year they get more and more of the land, and at the end of the day, what does it say in the Constitution? This is the land for the Jewish people. And why have they occupied that land for so long? Why have they done it for so long? It's because they want the land. That's the main goal. That's why the settlers moved to the West Bank. That's just the main goal. And that's how their whole strategies operate around, that these people are the enemy and the land is ours. So within that framework, what kind of decisions are you going to make? You're not looking for peaceful resolutions,
Yeah, that is a standpoint you don't really hear often in the States. Like, if your end game was just getting all this land and you had the world watching you, how can you do it? Dancing on a thin line. That's how Israel's doing it.
Well, one of the
I feel like there's better ways to go about it, but they like treading that line.
well, part of it is revisionist history, man. Like, how many people in the States know about the Nakba or anything that's happening there, man? They control, especially with Trump. We can see now, we're in our mid-20s. Like, the power of narrative will never cease to exist.
It's it's as old as history.
Yeah. Like, the older I get, the more I realize, like, I always try to fight against it, but the more I realize it's just such a part of reality due to human nature, that how do you fight the power of narrative? You know?
Yeah, even fighting the power of a narrative is your narrative, and then you'd have to fight that narrative, and then you have to fight that. It's a never-ending fight.
Oh shit! Oh shit!
Watch a little too much Joe Rogan this last couple days.
I get, I think it's, at the end of the day, like, the United States, we stand for a lot of humanitarian and human rights stuff, whether we are always right or not. And U.S. military, when it came to Iraq lately, or like, we always were supportive of providing humanitarian supplies. We've never been the ones to not cut it off. Whether it always reaches the people or not is a fair question, as you raised. But at the end of the day, we're making sure that the supply, at least there's an attempt for those people to get the supplies that they need. And it's evident. I mean, all the hospitals in Gaza are funded by funded by like European governments or us. Like, they're built by European governments and us, because people there don't have the money to build them or get the supplies.
Right.
So I don't know. We've been talking about this. That's the frustration of the Palestinian people. Like, people have been talking about this shit for how long, and it's only gotten worse.
Generations, apparently.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just coming into the arena now.
Right. But anyway, shall we move on to a different topic?
Yeah. I mean, I want to give half a shout out to Germany. Like, well, Julian, you sent me this article. I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, it's kind of
And I'll give my critiques.
Yeah, I think before we start, like we're here to have an open discussion about this. We're not here to like, how do I say this? Like people will so easily can clip shit and things like that. This is an open discussion about what is the best way for women to have more power, right? Okay, maybe I need to phrase that better.
Julian, I opened this episode defending. Someone's gonna clip out shit we said. I think they might go after the Giuliani bit rather than this part.